Got a couple of topics of discussion for this morning, so I'll go through a laundry list of items and incidents from overnight and from last week, and then I'll turn it over to Chief Deanahan to go into more detail on some of the investigative updates, if you don't mind. So we're going to start with an announcement of charges against 28-year-old Anthony Rawls, R-A-W-L-S, in the stabbing death of a 41-year-old man on September 6th in the 400 block of South LaSalle. Rawls was charged with two felony counts of murder and one count of armed robbery on September 13th, just yesterday. The victim was making his way home from work when he was attacked by Rawls on September 6th at approximately 10:45 p.m. The 1st District officers responded to a call of a robbery as well as a call of a person stabbed. The responding officers discovered a 41-year-old man with multiple puncture wounds and lacerations. He was taken to an area hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. Police cameras captured footage of the robbery and the two offenders. Using private video, our area tech center personnel were able to track the offenders who drove away from the scene. Additional video was recovered which captured the offender's vehicle and license plate information. This vehicle came back registered to Rawls, who also matched the description of one of the offenders seen in the surveillance footage. Rawls was later taken into custody by the Area 3 Homicide Investigation Support Team on September 12th. During questioning, Rawls admitted to his role in the murder. We are currently working to apprehend the second offender in this senseless act of violence. Second incident we want to discuss, and with this incident I want to take a moment to offer my prayers and the prayers of this department to the young man fighting for his life right now in critical condition after being shot last night in the 12th District. We pray for strength for his family, and Chief of Detectives Brendan Deanahan will talk in a little bit more detail about that particular incident. In addition, we're also praying for the victims and families impacted by shootings in another part of the city on last night near Washington Park. Obviously, Chief Deanahan will give more details on that here when I conclude, but we need the help of the community for both these incidents to find the offenders and bring them to justice. So anyone with information, please come forward regarding these shootings. You can send any anonymous tip to cpdtip.com or call our anonymous tip line at 833-408-0069 and receive a cash reward for information leading to charges and or convictions. We won't stop holding offenders accountable as evidenced by the Rawls charges. Our detectives and our officers will be relentless in pursuing these offenders from last night's incident. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Deanahan, then I'll come back for a few questions. Brendan.
Thanks, Superintendent. So as the superintendent mentioned, we charged this offender with first-degree murder. He kind of went over the details. I just want to thank all the officers and detectives involved. Once again, it was a remarkable job collecting video and utilizing technology. Unfortunately, there's no eyewitnesses out there when this occurred, and yet the detectives' extremely hard work was able to bring this one offender into custody, and charges were approved. And then we are still working on locating the second offender for this incident. As the superintendent mentioned, unfortunately, last night on the 13th of September, just after 10:30 p.m., at 1833 West 21st Place is where we had our 12-year-old victim who was shot in the head. And as the superintendent mentioned, we really need, once again, some of the public's help with this case. The 12-year-old was walking to the store with his uncle, and upon returning from the store, going back to the residence where they were having a family party celebrating, there was 3 cars circling the area, and there was 2 individuals in an alley who discharged their firearms towards the uncle and the 12-year-old. The 12-year-old was struck in the head. He had a gunshot wound to the head. He's in extremely critical condition right now. We don't have any further updates on that. Based upon the information, and once again, the district officers did a remarkable job. They saw 3 cars circling the area prior to this incident. Officers attempted to stop one of those cars, which fled at a high rate of speed. And at the same time, other officers from around the city, we were doing a carjacking mission, and the helicopter was able to track this vehicle out to the suburb of Hinsdale, where I also want to thank Hinsdale Police. They did a remarkable job to stop this vehicle. They took 3 suspects into custody, and this investigation is very active and ongoing at this time. But we definitely need the help of the public to help us. You know, we don't have enough information to say that these are the defendants in this case. We need a lot of help with this case so far. So anyone who can come forward. Obviously, the detectives are back out there today. They're trying to gather more video and more evidence, but always the public's help coming forward to say, hey, you know, I saw someone exit a vehicle, someone run to a vehicle, anything that they can help us to put this case together. This is obviously an extremely tragic case. And the uncle, who's 21 years old, he's not affiliated at all with any gang. He's a valid CCL holder. He actually returned fire in this incident. He doesn't believe that he struck anybody, but this is just extremely tragic. The people we have in custody are gang members. We believe that they were just shooting at this individual because they didn't recognize him, you know, from the neighborhood. So we need a lot of help with this case. So please, you know, please push out to the public to, as the superintendent mentioned, cpdtip.com. You can call Area 3 Detective Division. There's many ways to give anonymous information as well. And then lastly, as the superintendent mentioned, at Washington Park, we had a mass shooting with 9 total victims, 2 of which were deceased. And once again, this is pretty active and ongoing as well. As you can imagine, there were over 43 shell casings recovered. What we do know is 2 groups were shooting at each other. It's likely a gang-related conflict. Multiple people shot, nobody in custody. Not a lot of video out there, you know, actually pointed at the park. It was pretty dark. So once again, in this case, you know, we're at a different opposite side of the city here, but we also need, we believe that people have information on who the shooters were, and we need the public's help. The detectives need a lot of help, once again, in this case, to identify who actually was discharging a firearm to bring some of these people into custody. We don't, with the 2 groups, we don't even have it fleshed out yet with the 9 victims on who was on which side of which group and who may have been firing a firearm. It's a very active investigation. At that, I'll turn it back over to Soup and answer, you know, questions as they come up.
Sure. Questions?
Dan Lomignot, CBS Channel 2 Superintendent. Is there any indication that either of these 2 groups were attending the circus?
Yeah, we thought that initially, but that's not what happened. The circus had actually closed for the evening, and all patrons had left, to include people associated with the circus. So we initially had some reports of that, but that ended up not being true.
So essentially they both got into an argument, and for whatever reason, both sides shooting at each other, or do you know if it was
That's what we
side?
believe now, but that, again, we've got a lot of work to do to confirm and corroborate all of those types of things that we just can't prove right now happened. But there's a lot of shell casings out at the scene. So likely both groups fired, but again, we've got to continue to work to prove that.
And you mentioned of the individuals that were injured, do they have any criminal backgrounds or any gang affiliation?
We don't know that yet. We have yet to get interviews from these folks. Some are not cooperative, but we'll keep at it. We just need the public's help to confirm and corroborate some of the things that we right now don't know. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Superintendent.
Hi.
Karen Jordan, ABC 7. Wanted to double back to the 12-year-old. And I know there were some details about the uncle. The 12-year-old was walking with his uncle in the neighborhood,
right.
And he is there any indication that this is mistaken identity?
We don't have any indication that the uncle is involved in any criminal behavior or criminal activity. There's no history of gang affiliation or other criminal activity. So that's one thing that could be true. Also, it just could be just a random act of violence. It's hard to understand and get your head around a random act of violence that this group just shot at this person for no apparent reason is what we have now. We'll keep working. Again, the public can really help here in identifying some of the people who were in the alley shooting. So just anything the public can do. Of course, we keep working, trying to identify video to get identifications on these offenders, but the public can really help right now. We're asking for the public to come forward and assist us in holding these offenders accountable.
Also, Officer Carlos Yanez posted a really touching video on
Yes.
Facebook.
Yes.
Talking about his thoughts and prayers are still with officers. It's tough to be an officer at this time, and how he's had counseling to help with thoughts of suicide. And can you just talk about that? I mean, it was a very frank, he was very open and honest about his thoughts and feelings.
What I like most about what Carlos said was, I needed help, he says, and if you need help, call me. Because that's really what it's going to take to stem the tide of suicide in our profession, and suicide's really across the board in this city, and there's a spike in suicide across the board. So I think open conversations, frank conversations, honest conversations around suicides is a first step at stemming the number of suicides. Also, I think that our programming, our number of clinicians, we're trying to hire 9 more clinicians. We have 13. That's up from 3 just a couple of years ago. But we need to talk about this much more publicly, and Carlos is really brave in providing this video conversation with, hopefully many officers will see it, and if they're struggling, they'll feel so inclined to come forward and talk to a peer or a professional about their struggles and hopefully save lives.
Hi. Joni Lum from Fox 32, Superintendent in Chief. My questions are about Washington Park, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You believe there were 2 groups shooting at each other. Were any weapons recovered? And also, there was a report that maybe a recreational game was going on nearby. Was this related to that? Was anyone else in danger?
So we heard a couple of things. First of all, the circus, which we debunked. That didn't have anything to do with the circus. And then it also had something to do with a baseball game that was happening nearby. We don't have any evidence that it had anything to do with the baseball game nearby. This was just a group in a separate part of the park that got into personal conflict with gang affiliations that we believe, from the information we have now, were shooting at each other. Now, we got a lot of work to do to corroborate all the things that happened. We hope to, at some point, talk to the victims. They're at the hospital, but we've got a lot of work to do before we can corroborate any of what we heard, what we're working on right now. So a lot more work to do. Gun casings, we don't have any weapons. No weapons were recovered. No. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Superintendent Tom
Hey,
Shaw
Tom.
with the Sun-Times. How are you?
Yep.
Just based on the sheer number of shell casings that were recovered, do you guys believe that this was an automatic, and any automatic weapons were used?
That's a good assumption. Switches that make single-action weapons fully automatic has been driving the multiple people shot, as well as the high-capacity magazines that hold more bullets in them, the drum magazine and the extended clip, paired with the switches. It has been really the dynamic that's changed how shootings and how victimization occurs after a shooting, not just here, everywhere in the country is seeing an advent of just an explosion of switches and extended and high-capacity magazines.
And to switch gears to the individual charged in the stabbing, the second suspect, was that person also involved physically with stabbing this man who was killed?
I'll have Brendan come up and
Sure.
talk about those details.
So for the second suspect, the person not in custody, yes, we believe that he is that he stabbed the victim causing his death. So we're seeking to locate him. I'm not going to go into those details. We're seeking to locate that individual.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.